City today, like myself, you were dealing in a lot of traffic today, so I really appreciate you guys coming on up. Seems with a little snow, everyone seems to forget how to drive and limiting the lanes, but we really appreciate you coming here. To my right is my colleague Anna Barry. We are the exclusive agents here at 3541 East 62nd Street. We've been working on this for quite some time, and we are thrilled that we made Along with, well, I was getting to that. We've been fortunate enough to have a co-exclusive with Mr. Ryan Serhant and Serhant, and this is really such a remarkable property, and we really appreciate you coming in today. I'd like to introduce to my left Mr. Bob Knakal, the chairman and CEO of EKREA, and Ryan Serhant. Awesome. So yeah, so today it's going to be a little bit of like an interview style type of questions going on, and at the end we'll do a Q&A, and then my colleagues Anna will do some tours of the building if you guys would like to see. So.
And if anybody has a question after, feel free to reach out to me or Ryan, and we'll be happy if you have any kind of buyer. If you visualize for any of your buyers, just bring them to us, and we'll be happy to schedule a tour.
Awesome. So thank you guys so much for being here today. And such amazing buildings as you can see on such a great block. We'd love to hear a little bit about the buildings from your perspective. What are your favorite things about the building? Bob, if I'm not mistaken, you actually sold the buildings to the previous owner at one point. We'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, we actually sold both of these buildings back. I think the adjacent building, which you walked into, was originally the Fleming School. I think we sold that to Ronald Perlman back in the 80s. And this one was owned by the Gary brothers, which was a family. They were in a family office out of here. And I think that was sold sometime in the early 90s. I love buildings like this, always have. I've been doing this 42 years now, and my whole career I've been a generalist. Generalist being I only sold buildings, but I sold all kinds of buildings. And I think back in the 80s and 90s, that worked really well to be a generalist. Sell all types of buildings, focused on a geographic territory orientation, try to do everything in a certain neighborhood, regardless of what kind of building it was. But today, with publicly available information so voluminous and so accurate, we really think that product specialization is the best way to differentiate yourself in terms of creating a competitive advantage in the building sales business. So today, my company is about 2 years old now. We are doing what you can do with vacant buildings in New York. And what do you do with vacant buildings in New York? You either knock them down and build something new, you renovate the heck out of it and change the use from one use to another, or you sell them to users. And these buildings are perfectly fitting into that third bucket. We are looking for users to buy buildings. And New York is very, very unique from that perspective, and that anywhere else in the United States, buildings that are rented are more valuable than buildings that are vacant. But in New York City, buildings that are vacant are more valuable than buildings that are occupied because of this user premium. And we actually, as part of our work, very, very analytical, and I like to talk about the market in statistics rather than adjectives. We did a study in Manhattan, south of 96th Street, all the way down to the southern tip of the island, looking at every user deal that's been done in Manhattan going back to 1984. And we categorized them all by who the most logical, who the buyer type was. Retailers were the most voluminous type of buyer in the market, but you have foreign governments, clubs, corporations, nonprofit organizations, a number of different buyer types. We have them all broken out. And what we did is we looked at each of the buildings that we handled. We called brokers that handled other ones. And there are always investors that make offers on these buildings, but users always end up buying them. And what we found that over the past 42 years, the average premium that the user paid above what the investor paid has been 17%. So think about that, a 17% premium. That means if an investor was willing to pay $10 million, a user would pay $11.7 million. And that's been very, very consistent for the past 42 years. It's been over 1,100 user transactions in Manhattan over those 42 years. And these buildings, when you look at the scale of different types of properties. A lot of it comes down to the quality of the building. And these user premiums, although they average 17%, they have ranged from about 1% to over 200%. These are the types of buildings that are going to get the highest user premium of any type of user premium because they're so unique. They're in an unbelievable location, bordering Upper East Side in the Plaza District. If you live on the Upper East Side, you can easily walk here. If you work in the Plaza District, you can easily get here. So many different user groups would find these buildings amazing, given the quality, the architecture, the nature of them. They really are unique, and we feel really, really excited to be working with Ryan and his team on these buildings because they could be residential. They have commercial zoning, so these buildings could really serve just about any subset of the market that you have, but truly, truly unique and spectacular real estate that you're in right now.
Thank you, Bob. And Ryan, you're the expert in the residential world. What is your favorite thing about this property, and who do you see here?
I don't know how I follow up Bob Knakal. I'm now fully educated on the marketplace. I've got new stats to bring to every client ever. Bob's the kind of guy where I'll call him just for my own benefit, right? Just say, hey, I'm going into a pitch, you're not involved, but I just need a quick stat that's gonna help me. He just knows. It's awesome. It's the power of information. How do you beat AI? How do you beat the internet? By giving a value prop. It's good advice for all of us. Listen, you have two individual assets here, right? Right now we're at 41. 41, we've had significant traffic from single-family home purchasers. Right? It's a great opportunity for somebody who wants to do an incredible conversion. Right? It's wide, it's 16,000 square feet above grade. It's in an incredible location. It's got great provenance, great history. Like, you're not going to build this ever again, and so there's a lot to play with here. And it's again location, right off the Plaza District, and it's hard to find this width. Right, it's really, really hard to find this width. Right next door, right, is a significant amount of square footage, 25,000 square feet. Also, lots and lots that you can do with it. I think my favorite thing outside of location is just pure scale. Like, to be able to find scale, to be able to find the volume, especially as you go floor by floor by floor, into such a premium location. Again, it's just so hard to find. But I guess the broker in me would say what I love the most is just the deals, right? Like, they're just good. They're good deals. Like, this ask price is $35 million for 16,000 square feet. That was 65. We adjusted the price to 49.9, so about $50 million for just over 25,000 square feet. Like $2,000 a foot, right? To do this, we just closed in the West Village on a combination offering 2 different buildings to turn into single family. It was $42.02 a foot, closed on Friday in the West Village, and you still have to vacate tenants and you have to completely renovate. Right, that's $4,200 a foot. We sold 36 East 68th Street, a 22-footer, fully built out for over $6,000 a foot. So, like, to your point, like, the deal is just too strong for the purchaser that has a real use case. And there's lots of things you can do here. We have a lot of interest in both of these from clubs. There's a lot of social clubs that are coming into the city, a lot of wellness clubs, obviously. There's government interest on top of standard family office.
And something to keep in mind, and Ryan alluded to it, the thing that I get most excited about these buildings about is the width. Most of these mid-block buildings are 20 feet wide. And if you have a 25-footer, that's, wow, a 25-footer, that's great. These buildings blow that away. So I think if you have customers who are saying, well, maybe I'll buy a condo. In terms of buildings, these buildings are at the top of the echelon. When you're at the top of the heap in the condo market, what's that, 4,000 a foot, 5,000 a foot, 6,000 a foot? 10,000 a foot if you really get to the Billionaires Row buildings. These things, I think, are a relative bargain. Yeah. And so I think if you look at the width, you look at the unique nature of them, they really do stand out as very, very unique one-on-one assets.
And they're good land grabs. We have a contract for something in Manhattan right now. It goes through, it'll probably be the most expensive residential building sale in Manhattan history. Was talking to the buyer, just making sure he's feeling good, feeling comfortable. And he said, he's not US based. And he said, oh yeah, when the Trump Platinum card goes through, this price goes up 30%. And I was like, the Trump what one? He said, heard about the Trump Gold card. He's like, oh, yeah, the Trump Platinum. He's like, it'll go through. $5 million ticket price into the United States, 270 days in the United States with no tax consequence. The amount of people at the global level who will pay $5 million as an entry point just to get in, who will then put their money into land grabs, will be incredible in trophy locations. And just something for all of us in this room to keep an eye on.
Hey guys, you guys in the back and in the other room, there's a really cool balcony up here. If you want to come in, go up the steps, you can go into the balcony and get a bird's eye view on what's going on. So please come on in from the other room. You guys
Got a lot of room.
back. Come on. Come on in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So in terms of the overall New York City real estate market that we all live and work in today, Ryan, I'd love to hear your thoughts and perspectives on the residential market. What neighborhoods are hot? How has the policy changes impacted your market? How the overall economy has impacted your market? And then, if you can, from your perspective, the investment sales market, land development market, user market, we'd love to hear about New York City as a whole. And I apologize for that.
No, it's good. Now we have a stadium seating.
There you go.
Listen, we'll see how 2026 is panning out once we get January's numbers. I can tell you that it's been incredibly quick thus far. I think we were expecting to have some rate movement today that we're not going to get. Inflation's a little bit stickier. Job growth is a little bit slower. But I think we are kind of in this new normal. I think the locked-in effect has kind of played out. People need to move, so they are making moves. The luxury market is incredibly strong, and that still comes from COVID, right? So like millwork is 4 times the price as it was 4 years ago. Try to find a good GC. Like it's just, people don't want to do work. It's incredible brain damage. It all causes divorce. So to buy things that are fully finished at the luxury level in residential, you're seeing things move at incredible prices. There's new construction everywhere that's just moving in ways that we never thought was fully possible. Things that need a little bit of work or that are on the fringe are absorbing obviously slower, but they're still getting absorbed. After Mamdani, I think we thought that there was going to be the Mamdani effect. What we've really seen is people saying, if there's going to be policy that's going to disincentivize the creation of new housing, well, what's that going to do to the existing housing stock? It's just going to make it more expensive. It's just supply and demand. So we've had things that have been sitting on the market for quite some time. We're getting bids on them. People are making moves. They're jumping on them because they just know if there's not going to be something new coming up to the left or to the right of you. It's just macroeconomics, and there's only one Manhattan. So it's been a robust January. It's been great so far.
In terms of the investment sales market, I'll try not to get too granular, but I think the market is going to go absolutely bananas this year in a good way. Why do I say that? Well, in 2025, there were 691 buildings sold in Manhattan, south of 96th Street. South of 96th Street, there's 27,649 buildings. That was a 2.5% turnover rate. That is the 7th year in a row that Manhattan has had an at or below trend turnover rate. That has never happened before. The longest period we ever had of below trend turnover was during the S&L crisis in the early 90s, when it was 4 years. We're now 7 years below trend. There is tremendous pent-up demand in the market to sell, and pricing is starting to increase, but we're coming off a level. We've been 3 or 4 years now where in certain asset classes, namely multifamily properties, B and C office, where you're able to buy buildings at the same price per square foot that you could have bought them at 25 to 30 years ago. When have you ever seen something like that? And so I think it's the greatest buying opportunity of a generation. I always said the best buying opportunity I ever saw was during the savings and loan crisis in the early 90s, when some properties lost as much as 75% of their value. Well, I'll tell you right now, we're coming off of a B and C office market that lost more than 75% of its value. The same buildings that we were selling 7, 8, 9 years ago for $800 and $900 a square foot, we're selling in the 300s and the 200s and even the high 100s per foot. You can't find one of those B and C office buildings today for less than something in the 3s, and those are becoming fewer and further between. The only sector of the market that I think is troubled and that our new mayor is going to hurt even more is our rent stabilized housing stock. Those buildings that lost 75% of value and are likely to lose another 10 or 15% of value, so they'll be trading on 10 or 15 cents on the dollar from where they were at the peak. But there's no future in those buildings. The expenses are going up significantly more rapidly than income is, and they're money-losing propositions. The only people who are buying them are people who think that the political pendulum is going to swing, but that political pendulum has never been heavier, and that's probably a 15-year lift. But every other property type is seeing increases in value. You look at our retail market, leasing activity has picked up, rent stopped going down, investor demand is back. The industrial market is very, very solid and strong. Our hotel market is the strongest sector in the whole city. We had 130,000 hotels. There are 30,000 of them are no longer hotel rooms and converted to other uses. Look at what ADRs are. Try to get a hotel room, even in a crappy hotel in the city. You're going to be paying $700 or $800 a night, right? So occupancies are up. That market is extremely strong. Investor demand is off the charts. I think that turnover and the activity that brokers are going to see and that market participants are going to see is going to be crazy this year. I thought it was going to happen last year, but so many, the majority of buildings in New York City are apartment buildings, and most of those apartment buildings are rent stabilized. Many of those buildings didn't trade last year, even though they should have, which would have driven turnover much higher, but those are zombie buildings today. The owner's equity has been wiped out. The bank is significantly impaired. The owner doesn't want the building. They want to give the keys back to the bank. The bank doesn't want the keys because there's so many liabilities attached to these buildings. That has depressed turnover, but turnover is going to pick up because there will be a day of reckoning. Banks are going to have to come to the market, and I think a combination of that and finally the upward pressure we're seeing on values is going to create a lot of both non-discretionary and discretionary selling. And when you have that, you can get up to pretty high turnover. The highest turnover we ever had, I mentioned the long-term average is 2.5%. In 2015, the turnover rate was 4.7%. So there's a long way to go in terms of the capacity the market has, and we think this year is going to be really outstanding.
Thank you, Bob. That was one per question. You answered.
Good job, Bob.
So, changing the topic a little bit, we want to ask you, and I know Ryan also participated in this, how was it going down the memory line to write selling buildings?
Oh, my book. Yeah, my book came out in May, and basically it's a summary of my journey, which was at the time 40 years in the business. And it was fun. It was going down memory lane. Paul Massey and I were partners for 30 years. Still one of my best friends, and lots of twists and turns. We almost went bankrupt 3 times. We got up to 250 people, had to fire 25% of our staff. Almost sold the business in 2007 for $50 million, which I thought was all the money in the world at that time. And for a variety of reasons, that deal didn't happen. But we sold at absolutely the perfect time. In 2014, more buildings were sold in New York City in 2014 than any other year in history. 5,534 buildings sold. That's an all-time record that still stands by more than 10%. But we weren't that smart. We got totally lucky. We decided we would sell in 2014 back in 2008 because we negotiated with CBRE that potential $50 million deal. It became very apparent to us that we would be on 5-year contracts whenever we did sell the company. And so we looked ahead, and Paul's 2 years older than me, and we said in 2015, he's turning 55. So our calculus at the time was, hey, if somebody's going to buy our company and want us to keep working there for 5 years, they're gonna think we're gonna be a lot more productive if we're in our 50s than if we're in our 90s. So in 2014, if the market doesn't stink, let's sell the company. And we get to 2014, the market's rolling along, and we hired an investment bank, went out, we got very, very lucky. We got Cushman to buy us for $100 million. And I tell a lot of stories along the way, lessons learned, deal stories that are very indicative of what was going on in the Florida market at the time. But very, very happy with the way the book has performed. I wrote it with my broker coach, Rod Santamassimo. I've had a broker coach since 2011, and he's become one of my best friends. And you know, the book sold out in 5 hours, so we were very, very happy about that. And we've subsequently reprinted, and it's available on Amazon.com. But it was, you know, thinking about the memories, and you know, in some ways, 42 years goes by in the blink of an eye, and in other ways, you think about all the things that happened, and it's kind of fun to go back and think about those things. But, it was a fun experience, but a lot harder than I thought, I will say. We didn't use AI to write any part of the book. We actually wrote every word, and it took 2.5 years to finish, but it was a fun experience.
Awesome. And yeah, you can buy them on Amazon, and if you come by our office, you can check out our books, and Bob can even sign them for you. So thanks, PJ. So Ryan, so obviously a lot of people know you're international now with Mr. Netflix owning the hat.
And Bob, I got Bob to do it.
So I know you were in your 80s were in multi-million-dollar condos and apartments here in the city, but you know your favorite scene that you filmed was in the map room.
Yeah.
All of us were there, and we thought it was such a cool experience. Tell us about season 2. How was that, and how it's really helped your brokerage and your brokers?
Oh man, I was so sick that day. I was like dying that day. But you're not allowed to be sick in Hollywood. The same way, like you can't be sick as a dad, right? It's like you suck it up, cry on the inside like a real winner. So yeah, listen, season 2 was an incredible experience. The Netflix machine is unlike anything I've ever been a part of. It is the largest global content distribution platform we've ever known, and with the click of a button, tens of millions of people are introduced to you and your world and your brand and the lead flow that comes from that. And you know, it's not just what comes on the inbound. The reason we do it so much is the ability to create the outbound. So for us at our company, the flywheel we spin all day is if you think about the decision tree of like an apartment or a home, right? You typically have 2 spouses and a kid, or you know, a single spouse and their best friend and their private banker, right? There's typically 3 people to make large decisions who are part of that decision tree. And so we make sure we hit all 3 where we can then be reached by that, meaning we do mass market media, right, to hit 1 spouse. So that was Bravo for me for 10 years. Now is Netflix that hits 1 decision maker. We then do thought leadership, so books, news, LinkedIn articles, Forbes contributions, everything that is just pure thought leadership about the industry that hits spouse number 2 or decision maker number 2. And then we do social, where we create edutainment. So property tours that are fun to watch, we track engagement, and that hits the kid. And we sell more properties through kids than we do through parents or through anybody else. A significant amount of our social content, especially around real estate, is through kids. Owning Manhattan is the most watched reality show ever made for entire families. So parents, and they know because they can track the data, it is not the most viewed. The most viewed is always going to be sex and murder, of which our show has 0. Don't think I haven't tried. I push. One of you just died already. But entire families will sit and watch it. 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds. We have families from all over the world who are outside our office literally right now, waiting and taking photos. And so it's been a great experience. But it's a real show. It's a business show. It's a deal show. And people have really appreciated it because there's nothing really else like it. And other than one other really real estate show now, it's the only one out there. It's the only New York real estate show in the world at that level, anyway. And my co-star, Bob Knakal, was great, and we got to film in the map room, which was such a cool kind of fun New York moment. You know, taking our boots off, getting in socks, talking about the deals. It was just, it was very, very cool.
Thank you.
And I should have remiss, I should have said when talking about selling buildings that, you know, I got to know Ryan through selling my apartment. He did an unbelievable job selling my apartment for me. We became friends, and he was kind enough to write the forward for the book. So thank you very much, Ryan, for writing the forward. That was awesome.
The best forward ever written.
Well, thank you, Ryan, so much. Thank you, Bob. And I have one final question for everybody. Who wants to come out to tour the unit with us?
Yeah.
If
Are there any
anybody wants to
questions?
come?
Any questions from the crowd?
Yeah,
Guys,
do
give
a
us
little
a
Q&A
mic.
and then we'll connect.
Why did you choose Ryan instead of Bob Knakal?
Why did I choose Ryan? Okay, that's good. So let me give you this setup. So the, you know, I think furnishing an apartment is something that's a very personal taste, right? And of course, everybody thinks their apartment's the greatest, as did I. My wife is my decorator, so whatever she wants, I like. But we had the apartment on the market for a year. It was a you know, fairly large apartment, and had a lot of stuff in there. And in a year, we had more traffic. There was another broker handling it. I had more traffic than I anticipated, but no bids. So I said, you know what? I went with somebody who was a friend of mine. You know, I'm the guy I'm always pitching. I should have done what I know to do, is interview a bunch of people and pick the right broker. So I interview 4 brokers, and the brokers basically said, look, your price is too high. You gotta drop your price by $1 million, $1.5 million, and you have to do some staging, but the price is just too high. That's your problem. So Ryan comes in, and you know, I had known Ryan a little bit, but you know, the perception is from a jaded commercial guy. They say this guy's all smoke and mirrors. There's no substance there. And we're talking, and I said, wow, this guy really knows his shit. He really gets it. He could be a commercial guy. And no disrespect, but I'm like, he thought analytically. He had facts. He had data. It wasn't additive. He was giving me numbers, which I really liked. And he also said, Bob, you don't have to drop your price. You're priced properly. It's just, you just need to do some stuff. You got to spend a few bucks and take this out, paint that, do this. And I'm sitting there saying, oh, that's going to be a pain in the ass. That's going to take me a month. But I said, you know what? I really think he knows what he's doing. And we hired him. We did the work for a month. And in the first weekend, he got me a full price bid, and we signed the contract. And it's like, really awesome.
Was that 1 million reduction or?
No, I had the full price. Full price.
Furnished. That was the tough part. It was Bob and his wife on the phone.
That's the main
She got it furniture. Yeah, that's a good one.
Awesome. Any other questions?
I have a very boring question, so I'm sorry. So you mentioned a great buying opportunity of a generation, but then you said hotels and other properties are doing well, except for B and C buildings. What's the reason for that?
No, well, in the office market, I talked about B and C buildings relative to the office market. What happened was COVID changed the way user demand for office occurred, but one thing that was consistent throughout was that new construction Class A office always produced very, very high demand. There is a thirst, and I think it's one of the things that drives the condo market also. There's a tremendous thirst in this city for new stuff, no matter what it is. And in the office building world, the difference between being in a 1950s office building or a 60s office building and in a new modern Class A building is like the difference between playing basketball in a high school gym or at Madison Square Garden. It is a completely different feeling. And I think if you built a new office building anywhere in New York, built it in the Lower East Side, Avenue D, you built a new office building, you'd have great demand and triple-digit rents. And so it really, the Class A new construction always did well. It was the B and C buildings that really suffered, and we saw this huge drop in value, and there was no tenant demand. I mean, we signed a lease 2 years ago. Our first lease that we signed was like at $20 a foot. I paid $20 a foot in 1992, right? So it's just, it changed things. It was that secondary and tertiary office space that really got hit hard, but is making a very, very good comeback now.
Anybody else? Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you, Bob and Ryan, for your time.
Two